Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Finally Clicked. I, Jesse D. Moore, am here with my co-host, Margaret McCauley Smith. It's a
Wow.
beautiful day, in the Pacific Northwest. I am so happy, Margaret, that if we're going to be quarantined and ordered to stay at home, it's like someone put in an order with the weatherman because it has been so nice. And this is not typical. It should be rain, like perpetually.
Yeah.
So I've been imagining doing this with like constant rain, and that makes me very grateful for our current weather.
Yeah. No, I was thinking the same thing last week, thinking absolutely the universe or the angels or God or somebody's doing us a favor up here in Seattle. So keeping everybody as happy as they can be inside their houses or on their balconies.
But anyway, Margaret, you have a special guest today.
Yes. Yes, we have a special guest. So I have a feeling we're all going to learn something new about him because I was just telling him every time we chat, I learn something about something that he's done that I had no idea. So his name is Luke Wyckoff, and we met in a Zoom call called Stronger Together. That's put together by Dave Momper. And anybody is welcome to join that. It happens twice a week. And it's an eclectic group of people from all over the world. And so we end up figuring out, where people have connections and what they do. And I thought that Luke's story and the little bit that I know of it would be really just perfect timing for right now. He's been through a lot in business, and I think he could give us some hope and some really awesome stories of resilience and success. So thank you, Luke, for joining us today.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Luke, where are you at today?
Today I'm sitting downtown Denver, Colorado, is where I'm from. I'm originally from Grand Rapids, Michigan. I say Grand Rapids because I'm actually from a really, really small town about an hour outside of Grand Rapids, a town of 722 people. So if anybody can beat 33 in their high school graduating class, then you've got me beat. But I'm a small town Midwest guy who made his way to the Mile High City about 20 years ago and just love it here.
You have me beat on the graduating class, but
Wondering.
my elementary school was in a 4-room schoolhouse in Montana, and then the combined 5th and 6th grade class was 11 kids, and we made the newspaper for that, the size of that class.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, that's impressive.
And there was one girl in the 2 grades combined. Poor girl.
That made for a fun 7th grade dance.
Yeah. It's no surprise. It shouldn't be a surprise to me. There's some, I don't know if it's from the isolation that you entrepreneurs are born out of the Midwest, but like there's so many people that I've met that come from small itty bitty towns and just have so much creativity that bursts out that I shouldn't be surprised that Luke's from there too.
It's called feeling trapped, Margaret.
Okay, thank you. Well, Luke, just to give us some context, because Jesse is the context king. I tend to kind of throw ideas out, and then he's got to remind me to like tell people where they're from and what they belong in. If you could tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are, I think that would help us to get started in telling your story.
No, I'd be happy to. So I graduated from college. My undergrad was a school called Ferris State University, which is a small school north of Grand Rapids, Michigan, mostly known for pharmacy, Division I hockey, a lot of other things. I graduated from the School of Business from that group, and I went to work for a company right out of college. It was very similar to Dunder Mifflin. If you've ever watched the show The Office, that was me. I was in that office. I sold paper. I sold labels. Some of the best sales training I ever had with this company called Wallace Computer Services, which the company doesn't exist anymore. But I worked for that company for a couple of years. And then I was sitting on the banks in the summertime in Michigan, it's absolutely beautiful. I was sitting on Lake Michigan in Grand Haven, Michigan, which is just north of Holland, Michigan. And I'm sitting there watching the boats come in and out, and I'm feeling like, you know what? I think my life I'm supposed to be doing something more than selling paper. I think after 4 or sometimes 5 years of college, okay, it took me 5 years. to get through an undergrad. I tell people I was on a 6-year plan and I graduated a year ahead of schedule. And I sat there and I was thinking, I think I'm probably worth more and I need to figure out what I want to do with my life. And I'm finding a lot of people right now, Mo and Jesse, a lot of people are having a lot of time to be very introspective right now with a lot of this downtime. And some of the conversations I'm having with people, they're having these same conversations themselves. Who am I? Do I love my job? Do I even have a job? Right? They're going through a lot of these types of things right now. And so I found myself sitting there and I pulled out a notepad. And on this notepad, I made 3 columns. In one column was, here are the things that I really love to do. Here are the things I just love to do. And in the middle column was, here's the things that I'm really good at. And what I included in that things I'm really good at is what other people also told me that I'm good at, because we call those blind spots in IO psychology, and we'll get to the psychology piece in a minute. But we call those blind spots. That's when someone else tells you you're really good at something, but you never thought that you were good at it, right? So you go ahead and you put that down. And then the very last column was, here's the things I never want to see in a job ever again. So it was everything from here's the type of things you don't want to see in a boss, to a culture, to everything else. And I kind of formed these 3 columns and I said, I'm going to go out and find a career that would map to those 3 columns. And it took me about 6 months to go through the executive recruiters and look around and see what was out there. And it narrowed down to 3 opportunities. One opportunity was a job for $50,000 a year, base salary, plus a car, and capped commissions. So if any of you have ever been in a sales type of role, capped commissions means you're only going to make so much in a year. Mm-hmm. The second job was $48,000 a year, also had a car, and capped commissions. The third opportunity was $24,000 a year, no car whatsoever, and uncapped commissions. All 3 of them fit those columns, right? But one of them fit those columns better than all 3. And obviously, without bursting the whole story open, it was the $24,000 a year job. And so I accepted that position and ended up being with that company for nearly 15 years. And as a side note, within year 2 of being with that company, I had already doubled what I was making of what I would have made with either one of the other 2 jobs, which was a huge note to myself that if you're always following the money, or if you think the money is the most important thing, think about it more as which one's going to fit your passion, right? Which one's going to fit more with what you love to do, what you're really good at, and has the least amount of the stuff that you don't want to do anymore. So if you haven't gone through that 3-column exercise, that's one of the first big changing things I did.
Luke, if I can interrupt you for a second, the 3 jobs seem like they all probably had the same passion link, right?
Yeah. At the end of the day, it was what I was going to actually be doing on the job that made the big difference.
Well, is it that, or is it your ability to bet on yourself?
The other part was betting on yourself. Knowing that I would have rolled the dice with me before I would have rolled the dice with what was going to be, you knew what was going to happen next.
Yeah, I found myself in a position, I've been in sales since since 15. And when I got to choosing a career and finding a career, I found that was like the number one delineation for me, was finding an opportunity where they saw promise and potential with me, but the decision was made for me when I had the opportunity to bet on myself. And that essentially I was in control of that return. I was in control, right, of your pay. So I totally understand going for the uncapped commissions in that sense, and just saying, well, if I'm going to bet on a horse, I'm going to bet on me because I'm in control of me, and I'm going to make sure I crush it.
Right. And the other two jobs were both in medical. There's nothing wrong with medical sales. But the job that I took, Jesse, was a job in the field of industrial and organizational psychology. So I worked with companies in the field of learning and development and helping executives learn how to be better leaders. I worked with senior teams on how to put together succession management plans. So how do you identify high potentials inside of companies, assess them against some type of behavioral criteria, look for those developmental gaps, and then develop them to be better executives as they move up in the organization. It was a wonderful career. I finished all the way through 1999, living in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and then they came to me and said, "We'd like you to run the West Coast." And so you get your choice: Salt Lake City, Las Vegas, or Denver. I'm like, well, let's see, 29 years old, single, Vegas. You send me to Vegas, I'll be in jail within a week. Not going to happen. I did fly into Salt Lake City and visited Intermountain Healthcare, which was one of their big clients, and got to spend some time there. I did like Salt Lake City, but growing up, when the other kids would go to Florida or Texas, right, to do their spring break trips, it was myself and all my buddies who always found ourselves out in Vail and Breckenridge and Aspen. We'd find ourselves in Colorado. I'd never been to Denver, but I'd been in Colorado 3 different times. You know, you pass right through. You don't even think Denver's there. You go straight up to the mountains to go skiing. So it was an easy choice in '99 to come here. And then I got to a point in my career, Jesse, where you get a little bored, like you get mentally stale.
I think Jesse can totally identify with that. Yeah.
You're having, yes, you're having the exact same conversations with people that you've had multiple times over and over. And you're like, wow, nothing is new. Nothing is different. I'm not growing intellectually. And so I kind of had to make a decision in 2002 of whether I was going to leave this company or go back to school and see if I can't get the intellectual stimulation started back up. So I applied and got accepted and went through the 2-year program in the executive MBA program at the University of Colorado. And that was a huge changing point for me. I ended up staying with the company for 2 more years. And at the end, made my first venture into the entrepreneurial world at age 36. And that was a big shift for me because it's a big shift here also because there's a lot of other things that were going on in my life at the same time. I had, and think about the biggest psychological things that people go through in their lives, right? I had left a company after, more than 13 years. I had moved. I had started a company. I had just gotten engaged, and my father passed away all within 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of a lot of pressure to put on somebody. It's a lot of pressure at one point in time to like put all of those things on a page at one time. And it was intense, but I ended up starting a human resources consulting firm that specialized in executive search, only because my network was strong in the human resources field where a lot of people would go for the executive search. And so I started that company and was doing HR consulting for a couple of years. And then this is when everything changed. And this is kind of the story where the story really gets kicking in. Is I'm in front of all 13, here in Denver, we have a healthcare system called Health One. And there's 13 hospitals that are all part of that system. And I had all the CEOs of those 13 hospitals in the room, and we were talking about succession management and executive assessment. Again, how do we identify high potentials in a hospital, look who's the best of the best, assess them and figure out where their developmental gaps are, and get them ready for senior level executive roles. I get done with my presentation at Health One, and one of the CEOs, he was from Rose Medical Center, he said, "Luke, you started your whole company using LinkedIn and Facebook, didn't you?" Keep in mind, this was 12 years ago. I said, "Yeah, I did." He goes, "What is that stuff?" I said, you want to know about social media? And everyone's head in the room is just nodding. I said, okay. So I hopped up on a whiteboard and I whiteboarded out a 3-month strategy for a $1.8 billion company. And I got done and the CEO says, well, why don't you just do that for us? And I said, do what? He's like, all that stuff you just said you could do. I said, I didn't say I could do it. I said, this is what you should be doing. He goes, yeah, we don't have anybody that knows how to do that here. Just do it for us. I said, so let me make sure I'm hearing you correctly. You want to outsource your social media to me like you outsource accounting or IT? He's like, yep. I said, let me think about that. So I went and got my study group together from graduate school because these guys, honestly, they will do anything for single malt scotch, like anything. And we sat down, we pro forma out the entire company. I walked it back into Health One and they said, yep, let's do it. And I remember walking out that day thinking, what the hell just happened? I don't have a name for the company. I don't have a website. I don't have an email address or a business card. I don't have a logo. I don't have a phone number. Aren't you supposed to have a lot of these things before you like start a company? Well, I'm here to tell all of you today, no, you don't. What you need is a paying customer. You have a product or service and someone is willing to pay some type of value for that product or service. And no matter what that is, you get that started and you get going. And that's where the company started. And now this is a fun part. If you're entrepreneurs on the phone and you like those types of topics, I was always wondering if we had priced it up right. Remember, this was all done over scotch the week before, right? How do you even price up something that's never been done before? You know, because they said yes, let's do it. And I walked out the door. So I picked up the phone and I contacted a company called Time Warner Telecom, TW Telecom. And I said, hey, can you put me in front of the senior vice president of marketing? I got something I'd like to show him. And my friend said, oh, absolutely. So he made that happen. But I walked in and I doubled my price. You catch that? Mm-hmm. I doubled the price. Walked it into Time Warner Telecom within 45 minutes, walked out with a signed contract and thought to myself, they said yes too fast. And that was with me doubling the contract. So next phone call was to a company many of you know called Remax, which is Remax corporate headquarters is located right here in Denver. And so I got in front of their executive team, doubled the price again. Walked out 40 minutes later with a signed contract and thought to myself, they signed too fast. So I called up a company, a local company here who put their name on Mile High Stadium called Sports Authority, which doesn't exist anymore. They were bought out by Dick's Sporting Goods. Mm-hmm. Took the same concept into that company, doubled my price again. And they came back and said, we'll think about it. And they came back 3 days later and said, yep, let's do it. So that's how I actually set my pricing model, was totally driven by the customer and by the value of what you're doing. What I learned as an entrepreneur in that moment was what you thought the perceived value was way undervalued to what the client thought the perceived value was. So in a matter of 4 weeks, I had the biggest healthcare company in all of Colorado, Time Warner Telecom, Remax, and Sports Authority, all as our first 4 customers. Those are some pretty big names.
Yeah.
We were able to anchor that and grow that company over to the last 12 years, where we had been the fastest growing private company in Colorado twice by the Denver Business Journal, and grow it to over 400 clients and 28 employees over the course of the last 12 years.
And that's social media energy?
That is social media energy. But, and then it started to really grow. And then it started to get really, really fun. Because as an entrepreneur, when you start seeing money like that coming in and you're hiring employees and you're growing a company, you don't think anything can touch you. You're on top of the flipping world. It is awesome. Life is so good. At that point in time, I had a suite at the Pepsi Center. I had a suite at the Rockies, season tickets to the Denver Broncos, the $1 million loft downtown, the $100,000 BMW, playing out at Lakewood Country Club as my golf thing. I was sitting on top of the world, and there was nothing that could touch me. It was unbelievable. Life was awesome. It was incredible. Until the phone call came. And this was tough. I got a phone call one day, and it was from our bank. And they said, Mr. Wyckoff, you've bounced a check, and we wanted to run this by you. And I said, what check is it for? What's this $20,000 check to such and such event? I'm like, yeah, we're the sponsor of this event. It was in Las Vegas. And he said, yeah, that's the check that bounced. I said, that can't be. There's more than $750,000 in that account. He said, Mr. Wyckoff, there's nothing in this account. I said, something's got to be wrong. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll come down to the bank right now and we'll hash this out. We'll figure it out. And so mistake number one I made was turning around to the bullpen. We had a really cool office, which was like a big bullpen. And I turned around to the folks and I said, hey guys, something's weird down at the bank. I've got to go check on something. I'll be back in about an hour. So I went down to the bank, and they pulled out all the reconciled statements for the past 4 months. And my face just turned completely white. And I went to go sit down. And I turned around and I called my operations person in the office. And I said, is our CFO still there? And he goes, nope. He walked out 5 minutes after you left and took his computer with him. I said, okay. Well, I came back to the office. I had the police with me. We went through and tried to find stuff. And overnight, we pretty much lost everything. And not only did he take north of $800,000 from the company, he also left us about $130,000 in debt, which was money that was never paid to vendors and other people. We hired a lot of subcontractors to do projects for us. When we're handling the digital marketing, you hire videographers, you hire photographers, you hire graphic artists that are doing all these things. You have all of these subcontractors. None of these people had been paid, and they hadn't been paid for a long time. I never saw it because the reports that were given to me showed everything was perfect. The reports that I got to see showed that life was great. And there's where you learn a big lesson as a business owner, that you reconcile the books with your bank every Friday. Every Friday. It's the old Ronald Reagan, trust but verify. You can trust the numbers are good, but verify them. Trust but verify.
How long had he been doing that for?
I'm sorry?
How long had he been changing the reports that you saw for your CPA?
He had been on board for just over 4 months.
Wow.
And he was able to drain those accounts dry, only to find out later that wasn't even his real name. He wasn't at the address that we had on file for him. Everything was gone. And
we'll just call him Dirty John.
Yeah, Dirty John. There's a lot of things I'd like to call him. We'll talk about forgiveness at the end. It is Good Friday. We can talk about that. It was, and that set off a chain of events that ended up pulling me into one of the lowest parts of my entire life, where we had to start letting people go. We weren't. I left the $1 million loft downtown, sold off the BMW and bought a $2,500 2004 Audi from my guy who worked at the shop, the Audi shop. I bought a $2,500 car. I moved out. I got rid of my interest in the suites at the Pepsi Center and Coors Field. I sold my Broncos season tickets and I left the country club. And in 3 days, I was living in the basement of one of the guys that I played rugby with in my undergrad in Golden, Colorado. I ended up living in the basement of his house, sleeping on a cot.
What year was this?
2001.
Okay.
I'm sorry, 2011. Excuse me, 2011.
These decades just run together. I understand.
Some of them do. Over the course of the next couple months, we're by far, except for going through the pressure of when my father passed and some other things, I had never been under so much pressure in my life. The anxiety attacks were through the roof. The adult anxiety was through the roof. I was letting people go every week, trying to pay off the debt of the company and trying to maintain the clients that we did have. And over the course of, and I'll fast forward, but over the course of 14 months, I lived on $400 a month. I took $400 a month out of the company. All the rest was used to pay the employees that were there and to pay off the debt and keep the company going. And at that point, we went from quite a few employees, 28, probably down to about 6. And just a skeleton crew, just enough to keep the company going. And then I went back into business development mode and started to go out and find new clients, because nothing solves financial issues more than revenue, right, Jesse?
Yeah.
Nothing solves it more than bringing revenue in when your costs completely stay the same. And was able to, over those 14 months, start to pay off the debt, bring in more money, able to hire one more person back. And then after that 14 months was up, I actually got to move out of my buddy's place and take my first real paycheck again. And then the company, if you think about it, hockey sticked right off the bat as the growth of the company. Then we completely crashed. And then we got our second hockey stick, which is where the company grew over the past 7 years and continued to grow until about 2 or 3 years ago, when it started to level off and started to decline. Now, why do you think that happened? Think about what I do for a living. Think about what my company does. If an organization wants a massive presence in social media, but they don't want to do any of it themselves, or they don't have the talent inside the company to do it, they outsource it to us. So why do you think it started to plateau and then go down?
I would guess that social media overcame traditional media. And so over time, businesses began to bring social media in-house.
100%. Not only did they bring it in-house, Jesse, but we lived the glory years and the beginning years of SME because we were the only ones out there. About three years into the start of this company, colleges and universities started figuring out this is going to be somebody's future job, and in comes all of the degrees: a degree in digital marketing, a degree in this, a degree in that, right?
Yeah.
That are all social, a degree in social media, a degree, and all of those kids, fast forward 4 years later, 1, 2, 3, 4, they flooded the market at the tune of about 15,000 students per semester entered the workforce with a degree in what we do. So would you rather bring it in-house? Would you rather pay us $90,000 a year and outsource it? Or are you going to pay somebody $45,000 a year and have it in-house? All of a sudden, we saw a complete shift in the market with everyone bringing stuff in-house, and then we needed to adapt and overcome for those types of things. So it's been a challenge to do that. Today, the company is doing quite well. I have fired myself 4 different times since the beginning of running this company.
That's a great story right there. 4 times.
Yeah, I have a whole speech I give about how do you fire yourself. How do you get up the next morning and redraw your job description for yourself and come back in and do something completely different?
I think we need to have you talk about that to Keller Williams as a whole, just the real estate industry as a whole.
Yeah, that's been because what you might be doing yesterday that made you incredibly successful may not be at all what you should be doing tomorrow in order to be successful 2 and 3 years from now. Mm-hmm. And we found ourselves looking at that and going back and going, okay, wow, there's some really big things to learn right now. And so there's 2 or 3 things I want to leave you with, Jesse and Mo, before you could, if you want to open up for questions. The first one is, today, sitting here today, I don't have a suite at the Pepsi Center. I don't have a suite at the Rockies. That $2,500 car only died 6 weeks ago. I drove it every single day to 180,000 miles. I'd get in that car every day, and it reminded me to stay freaking humble. There is no season tickets to the Broncos. I'm not a member of a country club. And can I tell you something? I have never been happier. I have never been happier. All of those things that I had in my life were feeding an ego of a lifestyle that I thought I needed to live for other people to look at me and go, look at Luke. Look what he has. Look where he can bring me. Look where he can take me. Look at the fun things we can do. And today, without having any of those things in my life, I have never been happier. So that was learning lesson number 1. The second learning lesson I already told you, which is trust, but verify. And this is for everybody who's a business owner. You can trust the information and the data of the things that people bring you, but you need to verify. You need to check, double check, and triple check things to make sure, just to make sure. That's not trusting someone. That's not at all what that means. That means you understand that this is a business. And if other people's livelihoods depend on the revenue and the wonderful things that your company does, you're being more of a protector. You are protecting your company and protecting the interest of your organization by trusting everyone but verifying everything. And that's a huge piece. And the last piece I would say from a learning lesson perspective was you always need to be reinventing yourself. And that's where I'm finding a lot of people today and right now with this downtime, with the COVID time, and people are at home and they're thinking to themselves, wow, when we come out of this, what's the world going to look like? Is my industry going to be the same? Are people going to make decisions the same way? Shoot, what happens when I go in for a handshake with somebody and they pull their hand back because they're not ready to give a handshake yet? That's the type of world we're going into next, right? And so how do we adapt, overcome, and think about how are we going to design our lives next over the next year, 3 years, 5 years in order to take this on and do it right? And do it the right way. There's all these different groups that we're part of. This group we're part of today. There's the group with David that we're part of. There's other CEO groups that we're part of. There's a great analogy with, oh, look at him, there he is waving. Hey, he told me I could bring it in for the real thing and hug him anytime, just which is awesome. I did the there's a very simple analogy. When buffalo are in a herd and they're in the middle of a field and they see a storm coming over the mountains in Colorado, they naturally, as a group, head straight in to the storm together as a group, because they know together as a group they're stronger than they are individually. A cow and a herd of cow will see that same storm coming, and they will turn around and run the opposite way and scatter as individuals. I kind of feel like the groups that we have together and the people that we put together, we need to be the buffalo going into this storm all together as a group and come out stronger than being the cow that runs away and kind of tries to do everything on their own and be themselves. This group, groups like this and other groups, we need to be the buffalo, and we need other people in our groups to be those same people with us and bring them along with us.
I should have known that you were going to use an animal analogy, because this is absolutely something Jesse would do. Like, it's so perfect, Luke. I can't even tell you. He uses analogies like this in his classes all the freaking time about animals, cows, buffalo.
It's not just animals. Sometimes it's just about a way of life. Like I was going to say, Luke, I'm a quilter, okay? And I want to take the fabric of your stories and weave them together and give us all a little more context. I'm not literally a quilter, but
that's okay. I love using analogies, you know, with animals. You know, I tell most people that are, you know, if you're dog people, you'll probably go to heaven. If you're a cat person, you know where you're going.
So I want to go back. So I have a few questions, just to fill in the gaps. Regarding the small town that you grew up in, I'm guessing then that how do I say this? I grew up on a ranch in Montana. I grew up in a very rural area. I didn't know a lot. I didn't learn a lot about making money growing up. Like we always had enough money, but we didn't ever have any extra. You know what I mean? And so I'm curious if your childhood was similar, growing up in a smaller town.
It was. I was the fourth generation. My great grandfather founded Sheridan, Michigan, back in the early 1800s as a mining group. He founded it with 17 other families. And so the Wyckoff family goes back to the very beginning of that. And then, you know, growing up, my grandfather was the president of the bank and the hospital, and my dad was the mayor for 32 years, you know, until he passed. And then my sister's the mayor after him, and she never went far from home. It's that really small town thing. But my grandfather started his own company and did his thing. My father started his own company. He did his thing. I always knew the entrepreneurial spirit was in my heart, but it wasn't until I was 36 years old that I stepped out and tried to do it. But we did not come from, you know, millions of dollars, you know, being made in a small town. You do what you do, and the value, Jesse, is in the relationships that you have.
Well,
Value handshake.
I think there's I understand you getting the $100,000 car and the $1 million loft and the season tickets, because if you had humble beginnings, you don't necessarily know how to treat money. And it's not that I even bet you're reasonable in your expenses to some degree. I know that I have been, but I also, you know, the average income in Montana when I graduated college was $22,000 a year. So, like, I had no background. Like, if I made six figures, man, I was rich. I was wealthy. I was wealthier than anyone I knew in Montana. You know what I mean? And so when you have money and then you're like, I want to enjoy myself, which seems natural, right? And then you kind of look around like you did at some point and go, man, I have a lot of maintenance. You know, those season tickets aren't free. They cost this much every year. All of these things cost and they add up over a year. And so I also bet you had this idea I bet you reminded yourself to be humble because of how you grew up, right? So in the thick of it, you think you're being humble, right? Because of how you grew up, and you could plus it up even more, but you choose not to. And we kind of delude ourselves into thinking that we're managing this well.
Right. You think you are, but you're not always managing it as well as you could. You know, my biggest shift, Jesse, though, didn't come until 2016. In 2016, my cousin came out to Colorado, and he brought his two boys, and he grew up right there on the lake in that little town with me. He had three older sisters. I had two younger sisters. We're 3 months apart in age. It doesn't get any closer than brothers, right? He came out to Colorado. We were up in the mountains and skiing. It was early January, and we get back to my place, the big place down in my other place in downtown Denver. And we get back, and getting ready to take the boys out to the back out to the airport. And so he sends his sons down with the bags, and we're going to go down and pick him up in a minute. He's in the hallway of my building, and he turns around and he looks at me, and he's got tears in his eyes. And I'm like, what the hell's wrong with you? And he looks at me and he goes, "You are the next to die." And I said, "What?" He goes, "You are the next to die." He goes, "I have been here for 4 nights and 5 days." He said, "You have drank 16 bottles of wine." He goes, "And I think this is your normal." And I'm thinking to myself, it's not abnormal. He goes, "You take a bunch of drugs in order to go to sleep at night." He goes, "You are the perfect cocktail for not waking up the next morning." He's like, "How many of your buddies from college, from undergrad, have died in their 40s from alcohol?" And he knew the answer because we talked about it. It's 3. I've had 3 buddies that left wives and kids and didn't make it. And he goes, "You're the next." He goes, "You're number 4." He goes, "I'm crying because I'm watching my best friend kill himself slowly in front of me." And I looked at my cousin and I said, "Okay, I'm done." He says, "What do you mean you're done?" I said, "I'm done drinking." He goes, "What, for like 5 hours?" I'm like, "No, forever." He goes, "Yeah, we'll see." And we went down, we got in the car, drove him out to the airport. Coming back from the airport, not knowing any of your religious things of everyone who's on this car, I got out of my car halfway coming home, and I hit my knees, and I just prayed to God to take the desire of alcohol out of my heart forever. And on January 13th, 2016, I became sober. It's been 4 years and 3 months that I became sober. And everything that's been great in my life happened after that sobriety happened. Adult anxiety went away, dropped 80 pounds, gotten the best shape of my life. Business started shooting through the roof. Then I did a financial analysis, Jesse. You want to see this one? add up go pull out your credit card and add up all the alcohol that you've had in 1 year.
Oh.
And anything that's attached to that alcohol, i.e. Uber, Lyft, and for me, late night hot wings. Because let me tell you, there's nothing that says I have been drinking like a fiend, right? Than getting home.
I hope you still have hot wings right now, because you can definitely still have those.
Oh, yes, I can. And $26,400 a year is what I saved.
Wow.
In just those 3 categories. So imagine if someone just handed you an extra $26,400 a year and said, "Why don't you go do something better with that money?" That's what it felt like to stop drinking. And I have you have to realize I have a full bar right over here. Okay? That is all for guests. Okay? All for guests. And I don't it doesn't bother me whatsoever that other people can have cocktails and drinks. I just know that I can't. I was a Ferrari that when you start it, it only goes 1 speed. And
I think that's amazing that you can live with that.
Well, don't forget, a lot of that alcohol wasn't just me. It was me buying for everybody else because it's what you do.
Yeah, it is what you do.
So,
I've been
someone,
there.
someone shot a note in the chat room. That's like $70 a day. Yeah, it is.
I
Yes,
have to ask you. I mean, there's so many different places we could go into this. One is I don't even know if religion or faith played a part for you in any of those changes as it did for Jesse in terms of like, I mean, we've talked about it in previous podcasts, but inappropriate religion, faith that influenced what he thought he had to do and be. And then also, I want to know what happened to your fiance. Like in the storyline, that was like I think you said 36 when you were engaged.
I was 37 when I got engaged.
What happened with that?
36. Yeah, 36. We started dating, 30, engaged, 37. I was only married for 2 years. Married a wonderful woman. She had a son. I got to be a stepdad for a couple of years, which was a lot of fun for me because I had a really great dad and great grandparents, right? I really was very blessed. And, we got to do the Boy Scouts and do all of the cool stuff. So I got to play that part for a couple of years. And when we separated and went our different ways after a couple of years, it was really more of a realization that she's a very good person and I think I can be a good person. We weren't good together. Today we're friends, and today that boy is a freshman at the University of Colorado. And
It does not surprise me that you're friends. I'm pretty sure that once you befriend Luke, you're pretty much friends for life. Is what happens.
well, I've had a lot of I've surrounded myself with people who are strong people. I mean, they're good. I this is not to tell other people how to live, but I can tell you in my world, I eliminate people that are glass half empty people.
Mm.
I really put it into two categories. There's life givers and life suckers. You're either giving life to others and adding to their life and bringing them up in life, or you are sucking the marrow out of their entire soul.
Oh my God! Yeah, that's. I
And
totally get that.
I got rid of people that were sucking the soul out of my life. They're no longer part of my life, and I just shot. I kept getting better and better and feeling better about everything, and those people don't exist anymore.
So I want to keep filling in the gaps. You talked about industrial IO psychology. Did you get your undergrad degree in IO psych?
I didn't. I have an undergraduate degree in photography, which we haven't even discussed. I have an associate's degree in public rhetoric, public speaking, which I use all the time when I do keynote speeches around the nation and around the world. My bachelor's degree is in marketing and then an MBA in finance.
And so the IO was more of an interest after graduation.
It was part of working for that company that did all of the learning and development, the HR consulting firm.
Okay.
I've worked that firm for so many years. I was surrounded by literally some of the smartest people I've ever worked with in my life. A lot of them were all PhDs in industrial psychology. I was very young to get that job. The fact that I even got that job at age 24, I just shake my head because the average age of someone who had that job in the company was like 38. So you grew up really fast because you were around a lot of other people who were really smart and really knew their stuff, right? So it was, I learned through immersing myself around those people who were really, really smart. And when I say smart, like they'd go to parties and they would make jokes about coefficient variables and they thought they were funny and like, aha, wow, you are really freaking brilliant, right? I mean, they were really, really smart people. They would take assessments, like assessment technology. If you guys have ever done like Myers-Briggs or other type of thing, they would take those assessments, they'd put them up on the wall, take the people's names off them during a drinking party. And one of the party things you do is walk around and put your name or put other people's names on whose profile do you think they were. That's the level of humor of these highly intellectual people. They were really good. They were a lot of fun to be around.
All right, speaking of assessments, Keller Williams, because of Keller Williams, we're very familiar with a few different assessments. primarily, I'd say DISC, and now we have the KPA. I'm forgetting, Margaret, what the middle one was.
The assessment that changed your life.
I know, what is it?
The ABA.
ABA. So we did, there's a number of assessments out there, and when you tell your story and you have your background in obviously HR and a heavy use of assessments, and yet that assessment didn't pull out that CFO, right?
No, because I didn't use any of the assessments when we hired that CFO. Now, see, this is another great thing is that I took it upon myself that the reason why maybe a lot of that stuff happened. The weird part is, Jesse, when you sit with, and my company was not big, okay? We're doing like 3 to 4 million in revenue, right? I sit with guys that are doing 5, 15, 20 million, these other CEOs, right? And I, for a long time, would never tell the story. The story I just told you guys, okay, about the CFO story, that took me years to get over before I could break my ego down long enough to go, I hired him, I brought him in, I didn't pay attention to my business. And at the end of the day, this is the Boy Scout thing. If you're pointing your finger at somebody else, there's always 3 fingers pointing right back at you. And that's reality, is that at the end of the day, I take it upon myself that it was my fault that a lot of that's, he did it. What he did, he did. But at the end of the day, I could have, had I been watching the company store the right way, I would have known within a week, and he would have been gone the week after, knowing that he wouldn't have stayed because he knew I was watching the books as closely as I am. Guys like that are all over the place. In fact, one of the guys who owns a digital marketing agency here in town, he just sold his. When I finally had the nerve to go and have a coffee with him and literally break down and cry and tell him the story of what happened, he looks at me. He looks at me, Jesse. He goes, would you just shut the fuck up? I'm like, what? He goes, dude, that happened to me like 10 years ago. I lost $3 million. He goes, call me when you've lost 3 million. 700. He's like, shut up.
But Luke, again, if you had this background in HR and you had this background with assessments, and here's why I'm asking this question, because a lot of people that listen to this are entrepreneurs, or they are self-employed and they want to move into being business owners. And that first step, hiring somebody, is like the hardest step, right? And so you do it. I know what I did is I failed forward a bunch of times until I learned how to do it. And then when I had a process for hiring, which it feels like you would have had, when you have a process, you're supposed to be able to avoid some of these dangers. So
we skipped that step.
I know. So, but what made you skip that step then?
We needed somebody now. We were growing fast. We had just gotten a big fluctuation of money, of influx of financial investment into the company, and we needed a part-time CFO right now. And
that makes sense, because that's something we talk about. We teach classes on how to build a real estate team, and one of the things I tell people is hire for where you want to go, not for where you're at.
Yeah.
And so, because otherwise you end up putting the urgent before the important.
Yeah. We have what we call in my company, Jesse, the Big 5. So if you want to talk about assessment, we assess for what we call non-trainables. You either have these or you don't, right? Tenacity, resilience, energy, the ability to learn, and impact. Those 5 things. If you have those 5 things and you are great, I can teach you everything else you're ever going to want to know. And if you happen to come in with some technical expertise in some things that we need, bonus. But I can't teach you tenacity, resilience, energy, the ability to learn, and impact.
I'm sorry, can you say that again? Because I love that.
Resilience, energy, the ability to learn, and impact. In IO psychology, those are five.
God, that's my favorite thing.
Those are what we call non-trainables. You're not going to train someone in any of those five things. You either have them or you don't. And so we assess Jesse for those pieces. And I'm not sure how he would have scored on those assessments, but that would have been one that maybe would have knocked him out. At that point in time, we were hiring and interviewing people so fast to grow so quickly that I was like, do you like him? Yep. Do you like him? All right. We need this position filled now. Let's bring him in. And so I skipped my own process. I put my own process of assessment aside to bring in someone who ended up being a huge detriment. But you know what? You go back to that situation, Mo. You go back to this whole what happened, and I wonder, in a bigger picture world, if that wasn't the absolute best thing that could have happened to me.
Would you be the same Luke you are today if that hadn't happened?
Not even close. I'm afraid of the Luke you would have seen today. One, I probably would have still been drinking. Number two, if this company would have continued to grow and all of this stuff would have happened and I kept buying and trying to impress other people with money, I would have built an ego monster that I think I wouldn't have recognized myself. I wouldn't have liked myself because I would have only been wanting to please other people with the things that I have and the things that I do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm loving, by the way, the chat going on with everyone sharing their Myers-Briggs. I'm an ENTJ. Just let me put it out there.
All right. I want to hit on something well, actually, we'll get to that in a second. First off, what happened to this guy? Anything? Was there
That's what I was wondering too.
Yeah, everybody always wants to know what happened. What happened to him? First of all, we couldn't find him.
What the heck?
Like the address, he immediately phone switched off. The name that was tied to the phone was not even his name. I mean, he was good.
Do you think he targeted you for a reason, or was just happenstance that he found you?
People like him are really good at targeting CFOs. This other CEO that I was telling you about who lost $3 million, he goes, that CFO, the financial guy he brought in, that guy knew, he said within a week that he wasn't reconciling his books on Friday either. He said he knew within a week that he wasn't looking over the financials the right way, that whatever was handed to you from said finance person was the gospel. If you weren't double checking it against reconciling the books, you are a prime suspect and they feed on you. So here's the thing. This is when you have to make a decision as a business owner. And this was, by the way, after a lot of conversations with the folks at the state of Colorado and other places. First of all, you have to find him. And to hire an investigative researcher, or whatever you call him, to go find him, costs you about $20,000. And when you're $180,000 in debt, you don't have the money to find him. Then, when you do have the money to find him, it'll cost you about $80,000 to prosecute him if you can find him. And if you want to put $80,000 down, money has it, and I was given this advice, by the way, from multiple CEOs who have gone through this. You win the battle, but you never win the war because that money is already gone.
Yeah.
You will never see a dime. So congratulations, you found him. Congratulations, you prosecuted him. You spent $80,000 plus another $20,000 to find him, and it was all for what? Your ego, to win, because you had to win. So you make a decision. And the break-off point for a lot of CEOs and executives is around $5 million. They will go after someone between 3 and 5 million. Below that, maybe not, but certainly not for the number that I was going after. And so I had to learn forgiveness, because I had my couple of my friends are SWAT members in Boulder, and they're like, give us his name, let us know where he lives, we'll go beat the crap out of him. Right? I mean, seriously, you have some friends that surround you, and they're so funny when they're drinking scotch. It becomes really funny. Here's what we're gonna do when we find he can't do this to our buddy Luke, right? And that's kind of what it was like. But it was intense to then make the decision to say, I'm either going to stew over this for years to come, or I got to let it go and think about my employees, my company, and moving forward in life. And at that point in time, I needed to let it go. And because it was taking, again, negative energy, taking the negative, waking up with that. And I got to tell you, I mean, I tell this every once in a while, but in those 3 to 4 months when I moved into the basement of my buddy's house and started getting rid of stuff and started letting people go, I could literally feel my heart beating in my chest on those days. I would get up and I would say, Lord, let today be my last day on this planet. Let this heartbeat be the last one. I would rather not be here than go through the pressure of letting another single mom go and tell her that we don't have the money to pay you. And so that was that was a huge piece, was having to go through that piece of it also. But you learn a lot of forgiveness.
I'll come back to forgiveness in a second. I want to talk about reinventing yourself, adaptation. Gary Keller is very good about saying adapt or die. I mean, that's anyone that's studied business and the history of business and the history of industries knows that change is the only constant. And it honestly, it kind of infuriates me. I'm a hypocrite though. I'm going to be the first one to say it, because I look at, I get really annoyed by like the taxi lobbies that are suing to keep Uber out of their cities, when I'm like, just be better, do better. You know what I mean? Like, the taxi industry had the opportunity to serve their clients better, but they didn't, right? And that created an opening for change and adaptation. I worry about the same thing in real estate, that, I don't want to wake up. I say this often. I don't want to wake up and be a travel agent in 1999, right? Like, and that's how fast we move these days. That's how fast social media moves, and how fast change happens. It could change like in a day. It seems like it, right? And so, like, for you, even though like with you were on the cutting edge of a new media, right? But only for so long before it lapsed traditional media, and now the market's flooded. So what's the change that you guys made to stay in business?
The biggest thing we had to do was to think about, where are there holes that need to be filled that other people aren't filling. For example, one of the things that our firm does really well is we listen and respond in real time. So if you're on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter and you're on a company's brand page and you want to know, where can I buy this, or where can I find an answer for that, or what about this, the answer needs to come right now. So you're asking a question in social media in real time, and we as a society expect a response in real time, because by the time I wake up tomorrow morning, I've already forgotten that I even typed you, right? And so we found a hole in the fact that people were not responding in real time, because social media managers work 9 to 5. They're only going to work for the time that you're paying them, and especially in the big companies. We took the product we call off hours, and we handle the hours that you don't. So if you need someone to respond back at 9 a.m. in the morning on Saturday morning for someone who wants to buy a product or service, that's my team that's responding back to you in real time as if we are the company. So we invented a whole product line that responds to people in real time, because if it's hot for you right now, then you have a very short window of time to close. Jesse, if someone was like, hey, I'm interested, I saw your post on Facebook for 1792 Chest Hawk Lane. Does that place have air conditioning? ? And guess what? That question just sits there on your Facebook page for hours and hours and hours. This person is already looking at 6 other places, and they've got scheduled meetings to go see other houses tomorrow afternoon by the time a person even logs onto their Facebook page and looks and see what the question is. We are losing leads. We are losing people to buy products and services by not responding in real time. And we saw this coming a year ago, so we invented a product around that. And that's where the hockey stick started going back up again, is when we started looking for where the holes are. We don't want to be the next Uber. I don't want to sit here as the CEO of Blockbuster and watch Netflix come in and hand me my lunch. I'm constantly thinking, what can we be doing differently now that we can be driving things different with not only our clients now, but clients for the future. And we're constantly reevaluating, firing ourselves and rehiring ourselves back the next day. It's one of the best exercises I've ever gone through. Firing yourself, rewriting your job description, and the next day, that is your new job description.
Yeah, I've done that. I've done that myself. Not successfully yet. As far as firing myself and replacing myself, but I've been on that path. I've done it for sure. I love your message though, that in that moment where you need to adapt, you kind of double down, because the asset that you have is, while those people might have a college degree, you've got the feet on the ground, right? Like you've been in the trenches, you've actually done the work, you've done it. So I like how you got more specialized in what you did, right? And I think that's what, even in this moment with the stay-at-home order going on and everything else, like I know that you're gonna see real estate agent count dwindle. Like it's gonna start to come down, because this is the great equalizer. If you don't survive this, you're gonna be doing something else. And I love having this conversation also, and I like I like being able to reevaluate where we're at in life. I like being self-aware, and I think that this is I think a lot of people are gonna be introspective about this and realize that, they've been living paycheck to paycheck for a job that only, like literally their job was only as good as 1 extra paycheck or 2 extra paychecks, and do they want to sacrifice their life and their time for something that might only give them 2 extra weeks or 4 extra weeks, and instead chase their passion? Like, it doesn't seem as risky to chase your passion when having a W-2 job or, working for someone else seems unstable or not reliable.
Right, which brings me 360 to the very beginning part of this conversation. I wish everyone would go through that 3-column exercise I did when I was 24. Because I think people, if they were doing what they love and they forgot about the money piece, the money comes later. And if they could get up every day and go, I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this again today, because it's the stuff I love to do. It's the stuff that I'm good at and has a lot of the things that I don't ever want to see again on a job. If people could just bring their happiness level up doing that, I think you're going to find a lot of people. I think you'll see depression go down. I think you'll see adult anxiety start to decrease. I think there's a lot of other things that are tied to the fact that a lot of people get up in the morning and go, oh, God, I got to do this again today, but I get a paycheck, so I got to do it. It's just a huge difference, just a big difference. So,
Well, and I also, oh, sorry, Margaret, I should go ahead.
No, it's okay. I'm not going to stop the conversation. I think this could go on for a while. But a question for the two of you from Dave is, love the point that Jesse made. Freelance and fringe business are the scouts of business and culture. Eventually, everyone wraps their heads around a new skill or way or facet and folds it into their business ops. What I'm really dying to hear about, keep it in mind, COVID. What is the new way, facet, angle of doing business that's just around the corner, like social media was at one point?
yeah, there's your next $50 million company.
David, go ahead and send me the answer when you figure that out, please.
I mean, I can just speaking to some of our conversations we've had on the Stronger Together calls. Personally, I think what's got me thinking about it after last night's conversation is helping people find what they're passionate about, which has been a big conversation with people like Simon Sinek and things like that. But more now than ever, the people that are stuck at home right now and having a really hard time facing their own shit, I think we have a real opportunity that people are going to be more open to paying for after this, if we sit in this for long enough. I don't think it's been long enough yet to see a lot of change happen after this quarantine time, even though it feels like forever for some people. But I think people are ready to pivot and do different things. And I think it's going to be those that are available to guide them and provide them with the resources to do that. That would be tremendous. But maybe that's too much of a social worker angle coming in. I don't know. But if I can make money using my energy, and I mean, we've talked about this #energy broker, right? That's my jam. I'm still figuring out how to monetize that.
I have to laugh at that because that's a number one conversation Margaret's having with me, and I have to laugh because right now I'm subsidizing it. It's not. How do I make money at this? And how does Jesse not subsidize it? You know what I mean? But it's a journey we're taking together because I believe in Margaret and I believe in that stuff too. It's just kind of uncharted territory to some degree as far as monetizing energy. Any thoughts, Luke? Any help?
I would love to monetize energy. I'd love to monetize the energy of like a 6-year-old. That would be awesome.
All right. Well, I think how is now your business? Is you running your business, or you have money for you now?
Someone else is running. The person who helped me grow it and build it 11 years ago is the CEO, and she is one of the smartest, most intelligent. She's just brilliant at what she does. She's already, I think, forgotten more about social media than I'll ever know. And she is running the day-to-day operations of the company. I bring in some new ideas, some new thoughts. I might bring in a new client every once in a while. I'm not tied to the day-to-day operations of the company, which allows me to explore and think about new opportunities and new things that I would like to create and do. And that's where I am right now in life, kind of thinking about what the next 6 months to 18 months could look like, what I can create, what I can design and put together and launch in this time that will make a huge difference. And that also feeds those 3 buckets again for me, right? I never not went back and looked. There was a couple things that changed, but a lot of things haven't.
Well, if I can make a recommendation, and I won't put you on the spot, okay? But I'm gonna put this seed in Margaret's.
Do it. I feel like he'd be good on the spot.
No, I understand, but I don't like it when people do that to me necessarily. So I'll just say this: I'm gonna put the seed in Margaret's head right now, and then you're effed either way. So you should probably go on her Operation Tungsten Light and show people how to break things down into those 3 columns that you talked about. You know, as an example, as a way to give back to people that are sitting at home wondering, you know, how do I figure out what I'm going to do next?
You know, Mo is a new friend to me, and I'm already at the point where if she asks, it would be very tough to ever say no.
And anyone that's listening or watching, if you have a question, go ahead and feel free to type it in and start to wrap this one up. Dang it, I had something else I was going to ask you, chasing right on the heels of that. Okay. What I was going to say, one of the things I'm really excited about when I try to find out what I'm grateful for about this whole thing, this whole pandemic and everything that we're going through. And one thing I'm really excited about is artistry, because I know that there's musicians that have a studio at home that are like, I can't do anything else. I may as well create music, right? Or you have painters like Iris Scott, one of our favorites, at home, same story, right? She can't go out and do, her options are limited. So let's double down on what we're doing, what we're creative about. And like I said, I just know people are gonna want to revolutionize their lives. I think Margaret and I have talked about this. I've heard this called the Great Nap that we're waking up from. And it's basically the period of time between the Cold War and now where we haven't had to worry about things, not to this degree. And it's so funny that this happens and it creates this mania and this concern and anxiety. You know, we've been doing it long enough in Washington. I think we're to the stage of acceptance. Like, I think I'm finally to this acceptance stage.
You really have accepted it? Are you sure?
I mean, I think so. I think this week I've kind of been like, okay, you know, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal. I can only improve it by my activities, you know? So sitting at home, sucking my thumb doesn't seem to be working. So like, I just have to focus on what I can control and what I can do and just double down on that. So I'm excited for you to be in this state where you get to be creative and figure out what's going to happen, what you're going to do next when we come out of this. I think a lot of people are there, you know? So I appreciate you coming on and talking to us, because I mean, it's good for me too. Margaret made a joke about, you know, me knowing what it's like to feel burned out, or I mean, I can fall asleep in a listening presentation because I've said it 5,000 times, you know, verbatim. It's a script. And so, yeah, part of it for me is finding out how to be creative and do it. And that's what I like about this, is right now I can't do a listening presentation the way I used to, because I would create a custom book for clients, and it depended on staff and having an office and a printer and all of these things. And so it's forcing me to deviate. It's forcing me to find new ways to innovate and match the moment. Margaret, your turn.
The last thing I wanted to kind of touch on was, so something I had reached out to Luke after one of the first calls that we were on, because I noticed in the conversation, because I like observe everything, that his perspective was similar to mine in terms of, I never want to discount anybody's current experience with what we're going through. I understand that this is not comfortable for most people, not comfortable for a lot. And on top of, for those of us that are not in a place where we have a home to be in. But his perspective being that he's traveled a lot and been in places like Calcutta, India. And I think that perspective is, it's not, I know sometimes people think that my positivity is over the top, or like can be seen as naive or innocent or ignorant at times. And it's not that at all. It's that I always go to a different place where, hey, I have a home. I made cookies yesterday. I'm pretty damn okay considering quarantine, you know, is happening. So I just think, Luke, that perspective absolutely has added, I imagine, to your resilience in business. And I don't know if there's anything else outside of travel that you would say has added to that, but I just think that's invaluable.
The travel piece for sure. The other piece is, like I said, surrounding myself with people that are smarter than me, right? Making sure that my edges are always being sharpened.
Mhm. Cool. I love it. I just wanted to mention that last part.
Well, Luke, thanks so much for joining us today and for talking about your experience. You and I feel like we do share a lot of things. I get emotional too when I hit a memory or like I don't get emotional a lot, but if I talk about something that matters to me or something that happened, yeah, certainly I go right back there. So like I hear you. I've done that on this podcast before. I did it last episode. So
I tell these stories because I want other people to learn from them. I want other people to hear these and take one or two nuggets out of my experience and say, I got this. I own this. Thank you for that little piece of wisdom. Because other people share their stuff with me, and that's how I sharpen my saw. So I appreciate this. I appreciate you putting this whole thing together. This was great. Wonderful way to spend a Friday evening as the sun is setting over the mountains here in the Mile High City.
Well, thank you, Luke. For everybody who's on, if you guys want to stay on, I'm going to cut recording in a moment, but we can continue to chat. So thank you for spending some time with our listeners and sharing your story. I know that it helped not only me, but I'm sure many people that are going to listen after this.
Thanks for having me.